To all those of you who have been here before, welcome back. To our new visitors, a very warm welcome to the third Tata Steel Bhubaneswar Literary Meet. It really gives us great pleasure to see such an excited and attentive audience for what we are sure will be 3 days of debate, discussion, disagreement, agreement, above all enrichment. Without further delay, I would like to start proceedings and invite on to the dais our guests of honor, Mr. Ruskin Bond, Mr. Chanakya Chaudhury, representing Tata Steel, Ranjan, Patnaik, from Shangbad, who have been such great friends to the Bhubaneswar Literary Meet, and Malavika Banerjee, the director of the Bhubaneswar Literary Meet, and last but certainly not least, Shri Manoj Das, our other chief guest, our guest of honor. May I now call upon Malavika to take over proceedings. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoonish, everyone. I am delighted to see this turnout. I don't know how many of you were there in the first year when there was about 1/10 of this many people at the venue. So we are doing something right. But I think most of the credit would go to these two gentlemen who are really the fathers of literature here. So without much ado, I'd like to call Mr. Chanakya Chaudhury to speak.
Thank you, Malavika. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and young friends. And I was just standing next to the dais before coming up, and I suddenly realized there were a lot of pictures being taken, and I was pretty impressed, and I said, I must have been looking good. Then I realized on my right side was Mr. Bond, Mr. Ruskin Bond. So then I realized that, well, it's not for me. Anyways, as Malavika said, this is the third edition, and yes, we started with a very low number of attendants 3 years back, and I'm pretty happy to see the turnout today, and I'm sure it's because of the two gentlemen here, plus the lineup for the next 2 days, and I think it's been a good literary event last few years, and this gives us the strength to continue with these events in Odisha. Odisha is very rich in culture, literature, art, and Tata Steel as a company has been connected and promoting culture, literature and art, sports all through, and I think this event ends on Saturday evening, and Sunday we have the marathon as well. So I think it's back to back, and I'm sure quite a few would have registered there as well. Having said that, I can see a lot of people standing today, and I'm sure the hotel management must be organizing more and more chairs. I'll not take too much of your time, but I'm very impressed from Tata Steel side that with such turnouts, and it only gives us more strength to continue these events, and where else but Bhubaneswar. Thank you once again, and let's have a great 2.5 days together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhury. I'd now like to invite our other ally in this wonderful enterprise, without whom the news of this event and without whom the advice on which this event is largely based would not really fructify. His patience, his support, and also his gentle humor has been what goes through these 12 months between two festivals and creates this festival. So on behalf of the Tata Steel Bhubaneswar Literary Meet, I'd like to invite Shri Ranjan Patnaik, who represents Sambad and who really brings this festival alive through the coverage across radio, television and the newspaper. So over to you, Mr. Patnaik.
Good evening. Mr. Manoj Das, revered Ruskin Band, Chanakya ji, and our good friend Malavika, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege for me to stand here and welcome all of you to this literary festival as such. Orissa is known for festivals, but this festival is something unique. We were associated with Tata Steel. There is a saying in Odia, people get spoiled when they get bad friends. Sangha dosare bahut kharap abhyas hue. This is one friendship I would cherish for the rest of my life. But for Tata Steel, we could not have imagined the festival of such a nature, and certainly not Mr. Ruskin Band, and to be following up them in the days to come, tomorrow and day after. Mark Tully is already here in the audience. I welcome him. I welcome all the other dignitaries. When I share a dash with Manoj Das and Ruskin Band, less I speak, the better it is for me and for the rest of the audience here. All I can say today, a newspaper house, Sambad Group, tries to get together people of various hues and do something different. And this is one of them. Festivals are many, but Tata Literary Festival with Sambad will be different from the others that is already visible and will be proved in days to come. Journalism, literature, and politics. Three strange bedfellows. I don't agree. Language and ideas are in trouble. Language not in very much use. Of course, not for the people who are on the dais. They use the English language quite efficiently, admirably, and enviably. But we people in this part of the country are seriously suffering from a linguistic competence, rather incompetence. Similarly, ideas that we cherished are in danger. The idea of India, the idea of a society that we have been promising everybody is in danger today. Literature cannot sit quiet and idle. Literature has a job to do. And journalism is supposed to be literature in hurry. But I think when nobody is running, it is better to be literature in hurry. Journalism and the newspapers have come forward to promote Oriya literature in a big way. With this combination and with the blessings of the dignitaries on the dais, I think my friends in the literary world and my literature team in Sambal will get the long felt need and the real impetus to do great things and achieve greater heights. Once again, on behalf of Sambad Group, I welcome you and I thank Tata Steel, Chanakya ji and his colleagues for giving us this great friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patnaik. It's a long time since I've heard journalism is literature in a hurry, and one is sometimes seeing the newspapers, especially the languages I read, one is tempted to forget that altogether. So now I'd like to invite Mr. Ruskin Bond. There is absolutely nothing I can say new about him except that I feel blessed that he's here today and that he's actually an older friend of Bhubaneswar's than any of us are. So it's like welcoming him to his second home. So I won't stand between him and his second home, so we'd like him to speak now. Welcome, Mr. Bond.
It's great to see so many of you here, and I presume that you're all interested in books and literature. I'm here partly because of Malvika and Tata Steel, because over the last 4 or 5 years they have given me a lot of encouragement, and my visits to the book fair in Kolkata has always been memorable. Now, I have to say that I have been a very reluctant participant in literary fests over the last few years, because I think not every author is an extrovert. Not every author likes to be in the public eye. And I grew up in an era when authors were practically anonymous. You didn't see them. You might have read their books, they might have been famous, but if you bumped into them in the street, you probably wouldn't have recognized them, regardless of whether it was Graham Greene or P.G. Wodehouse or any other well-known name, because authors were read, but they were seldom seen and seldom heard, unless of course they came and spoke on the radio, because we had no television then. And so the visual celebrity as we have today did not exist. So I was very reluctant to get into LitFest, because by nature I am a very shy and reclusive person, and quite happy to be anonymous, living on my mountain top and just writing my stories and poems there. But times change, and now authors are expected to not just write books, but to come out and sell them too. So very often we get turned into sort of literary salesmen. Publishers put pressure on you, and you find yourselves in various places trying to entertain people and sign books for them, which is all right, because I also like having readers. I like meeting them sometimes, and over the years I've progressed from being an unknown writer to one who is reasonably well known. And so thank you to Tata Steel and our other sponsor. And Manoj Das is a very old friend of mine. I think we met first in 1963 or 64, when we were barely 30 years old. And over the years we keep bumping into each other. It's almost as though I'm following him or he's following me, and our destinies are somehow linked, but there it is, there's no escape. I can't get away from him. So it's great to be up here on the dais with him. And when I was editing a magazine called Imprint back in the 1970s, he was a very strong supporter and wrote regularly for it. And then when he was editing a magazine called The Heritage in Chennai some years later, I did the same for him. And both magazines, of course, collapsed. So there it is. All these partnerships don't always work out very well. And in fact, I'm a bit wary too of co-authoring books with people. Because if the book doesn't do well, I get the blame always. So it's great to be here, and later on I'm going to be with Mark Tully and Mr. Sabroto, and we are going to talk to each other and talk to you. And in the meantime, Manoj is going to inaugurate and this festival, and we'll all listen to him carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Manoj Das to this festival for the first time. We have been trying to get him since the beginning of this festival, and I'm grateful that he could finally find time and to come here from Pondicherry. People who are above 40 of a certain vintage, even those who don't read Odia and are familiar with the short stories, of course, but they must have encountered him in their childhoods through a magazine called Chanda Mama. It was a very cherished part of my childhood, so I was delighted to know that this gentleman was the person responsible for all those happy hours in my pre-teens. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Sri Manoj Das to say a few words before we formally open the festival.
Thank you, Malvikaji, and all the friends on the dais and friends in the audience. I do not wish to speak now because I have to speak within a few minutes to you, and I'd rather preserve my energy a little bit. But it's a wonderful occasion. I do not know whose brain wave it was to invite Ruskin and myself together. It is a nostalgia. Malavika, thank you, Malavika-ji. And you must have been advised by some people, of course. I thank those invisible people also. And there are a lot of similarities between Ruskin and me. Dissimilarities are many, including his handwriting. You see, I believe many writers had to struggle their ways to come to the notice of publishers and editors to prove their merit. But one person, Ruskin Bond, the handwriting must have been irresistible for any publisher and editor to read his manuscript and to recognize the genius immediately. It's a rare phenomenon. The only pure Englishman I know, born of English parents, who have become much more than an Indian writer than many Indian writers. The remote atmosphere of the Himalayan foothills, the mind of those children, the trees, the animals, the birds, how much they have penetrated to his inspiration and how much we have enjoyed them. So, I think Ruskin, you have come, I mean, for this occasion, but I will keep my words for my next program. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We will now formally open this festival. We don't light lamps, as some of you who've been there last year and the year before that would know. We simply get our speakers who are the panel to come and sign on this canvas. So I would request Mr. Bond and Mr. Das to come and please sign on this canvas. It's just a mutual admiration camp, not an identity crisis. So thank you, gentlemen. We'll just request the audience to bear with us for 5 minutes before we rearrange the stage for Mr. Das's session.